Hi everyone, this is Matt. Welcome back to Touchgrass Gardening. Today we're going to be talking about avocados and cold temperatures. So we just had a hard freeze this past week, which means it was below 28 degrees Fahrenheit. And you can see there's frost damage. So I wanted to show you that there's frost damage on some of my avocados, but not on others. And the point being that each avocado variety is quite different in terms of how it can tolerate both cold and heat. And amongst the 6 that I have in my yard, I want to show you how they've dealt with a hard freeze, because some have damage and some don't. And you can see on this Fuerte avocado that there's just a little bit of damage on the top with these new leaves that had come in recently. And generally, new leaves are less cold hardy than older leaves. The thickness, the hardiness, new tender leaves generally freeze easier. So if you have tender leaves at the top of your tree, they're probably going to freeze when you have a hard freeze like 28 or below. So in our yard, it got to about 28 in this area, and I'll show you in an uncovered area of the yard, it got down to 25 degrees. And that's why we'll talk about why microclimates are also important. So this is the first tree I'll show you, which is the Fuerte. Only damage on this one spot, but you could also see that with avocados, the reason they're so difficult, especially where I am in Arizona, is they're both cold and heat sensitive. So last summer, this avocado had burned, and so this was all black, and this whole part of the tree defoliated. And so I painted it with a white trunk paint to try to reflect that heat off, because if it's black, it's going to absorb more heat. And so there's this white trunk paint, which has actually done well and caused it to gain more foliage again. So this tree has been through a lot, and it's still doing well. But this amount of frost damage is pretty minimal. And I think if you can keep it to that amount of damage, your tree's going to be fine. I did not cover this tree in the cold. I did not put a shade over it in the summer. So this tree is now what I consider fully independent. It's on its own. I just have to water and fertilize it. So that's what I'm really going for with my trees. Now I'll show you a smaller tree that is in a better microclimate. This tree is not doing that great. It's a Mexicola Avocado. Its leaves are a little bit shriveled up. It's not doing wonderful, but it's still surviving, and it didn't take any cold damage. So I'm letting it grow, seeing how it goes. It was bought as a pretty small tree. It's gained about a foot in 2 years, so it's not growing a lot, but it's still surviving our summers and winters. And the thing about this tree, this Mexicola Avocado, it's a Mexican variety. And often the Mexican varieties are much hardier than some of the more tropical varieties. So if you had a harsh climate like ours, think about some Mexican varieties like the Mexicola Avocado. So the next one I'm going to show you is the Aravaipa Avocado, which you've seen in some of my other videos, like my 5 favorite trees of 2023. This tree is incredibly hardy, and what I would say is the hardiest avocado in terms of both cold and heat in my yard. It has no cold damage at all. So down to that 28 degrees in this area of my yard, and no frost damage at all, even on the very top of the tree, no frost damage. You know, this browning of some of these interior leaves, this is normal. It's basically salt buildup over time. These are older leaves in the interior of the tree, and eventually those will drop because they don't get as much sun as the tree grows out. So you can't really think about that browning as frost, because it's not where a frost would affect the tree first anyway. You see leaves on the top of your tree that aren't affected. You can't look down here and say, well, it must have been these leaves that were affected. No, it would start on the top and the exterior of the tree. That's where frost is going to affect a tree first. So again, this is Aravaipa Avocado. It's an Arizona variety, extremely hardy. I don't protect it in the winter or the summer, so no frost damage. The next one that I want to talk about is my Seedling Avocados. And I did a whole video on this one already, how you go from seed to sapling to tree. And this is the tallest avocado in my yard, but you can see that it got a little bit of frost damage. And the frost damage is on the very top up there. You can see the browning and kind of the speckled spots on the leaves, and that's frost damage. And of course, this is a 15-foot tree 15 foot tall tree, and so it's not really something I can protect with fabric in the winter, and so I just let it go. And it does get a little bit of damage in the winter when we get down to that 27, 28 degree area, and it'll just recover in the spring, summer, and fall, as long as it doesn't damage further down into the tree. These top leaves might defoliate, and then the tree will keep growing. And you're not going to want to overthink about when you have some damage up there. You're not going to want to climb a ladder and clip it all off. No, you're just going to leave it. You don't want to clip off the frost damage that you get on your trees, because those leaves are still going to protect the tree if you get another frost. So you don't want to start trimming your trees until the winter is over. And so right now I'm just going to leave that. I'm not even going to trim it once the spring comes. I'm just going to let it be on its own. These type of trees know how to take care of themselves, especially once they're this established, this big. And so this is my seedling avocado. But the seedling, you never really know what it's going to be in terms of its taste or hardiness. But with this one, at least, it can survive down to those 20 degree temperatures, and it came from a Hass avocado that we bought at the grocery store. So I think even a Hass avocado seedling is reasonably cold tolerant, and I don't protect this one in the summer either. So it does well in the sun. The next one I'll talk about is what I've been really surprised by is this Zutano avocado. It is very cold hardy. So I've never seen any cold damage on this tree. It has a pretty good microclimate, but you can also see that it got some heat damage last summer. So this got sunburned, it's all black. There used to be a little bit more up here. It came down and I had to cut it here and then paint it white. And this was summer damage. But in the winter, there's nothing. The leaves, even on the top, completely green, no frost damage. And I think that this Zutano variety is actually quite cold hardy, but it struggles a little bit with the summer. And so I have it in a heavily shaded area of my yard, and I'm a little bit worried that it won't have enough sun to put on fruit once it's a bigger tree, but maybe once it's bigger, I'll start to clear some of this out a little bit so it gets more sun. But right now, I'm really concerned when they're this small of a tree, like 5-6 feet tall, that it can survive both the summer and the winter. So this is a Zutano avocado, pretty cold hardy, just protect it in the summer. The next one I'll show you, this is actually the last one, is a Hass avocado. And this is the one that you see at the grocery store. So Hass avocados are the ones that are the most common. Probably the most common you could buy in terms of a tree, but also the most common fruit that you're going to see in the grocery store. And this tree has been through a fair amount of damage in the summer. So it has done decently in the winter. I don't see much of any frost damage. Like these tips, it could be a little bit of frost damage. I think it's more likely salt burn, but it's also in a great microclimate where it's under this oak tree. It has trees all around it, and I really don't think it takes much frost damage. But in the summer, again, it's one that got damaged because I don't cover in the summer, and I had to clip the top. And so after I clipped the top, all this new growth came in the fall. So this is all new growth, but the top was really quite damaged from this last summer. I thought I was gonna have to take the tree out, but it survived, and I think it's actually gonna keep going. So I'm gonna give it a chance rather than pull it out of the ground and plant a new one. And I did mention microclimate, so I wanna make an emphasis on that by going over to my seedling avocado and showing you again why a microclimate matters so much. And what I mean by microclimate is that there's things around your tree, preferably other trees, but you can tell down here where there's a bit more around the avocado, it's perfectly green. And I have, a temporary greenhouse next to me that I have my jackfruit and mango and miracle fruits in. So it's kind of like a couple feet away from that. I have these other oleanders on the other side, and then I have 2 other avocados next to it. So, you know, it's pretty tucked in there, but at the same time, you can see that where it's exposed to the air up there, where there's nothing around it, that's where the frost damaged it. Whereas down here, there's no damage. Like some of this stuff, this is old. This is from last year. And this is partially salt burn, but it's also frost damage from last year when the tree was small. And this was the top of the tree. And so I have a thermometer down here. And again, this showed 29 degrees. So this was 29 degrees on our coldest night of the year. Whereas in an uncovered part of my yard, it went down to 25 degrees. So a microclimate is generally going to alter the temperature by 3 or 4 degrees. And that can often be the difference in our marginal climates between a tree surviving and dying. So the microclimate is a really important thing that a lot of more experienced gardeners tend to realize. And that's why you'll see people in marginal climates plant their tropicals quite densely. I don't really like planting that densely because these trees are going to get big, and I like big trees. And so I tend to try to spread them out somewhat, but still have enough where I have microclimates that can keep them a few degrees warmer and not die. And then also pick cold, non-cold sensitive varieties of trees where they might just get a little bit of damage, but they're still going to live and they're going to put on growth in both the spring and the fall, which is really when our trees grow here. So that's, I think, the last point I wanted to make on these cold, hard freezes that we've had, is how important microclimate is. But overall, I hope this was helpful when you're thinking about what avocado to purchase or plant in your yard. So for me, I had to think about both the cold and the heat. Some people, it's just the cold. Some people, it's just the heat. I think for cold, that is something that you might want to consider, but might not think about when you're first purchasing your avocado. So I hope this helped you to make that decision, and I hope you enjoyed seeing how my avocados have done after a hard freeze. So thank you for watching. Please like the video, and if you haven't, please subscribe. We just hit 100 subscribers, which was a pretty cool moment for the channel because it's a new channel. And just kind of seeing how this goes, and it seems like the last few videos have done well. I'm glad people are enjoying it. Let me know if you enjoyed this video too and what you'd like to see in the future. So thanks so much.